Really pleased to introduce now Andy Robinson, who I met for the first time this evening and have certainly enjoyed doing so. We have been, since CLAFI began, I have determinedly wanted to have at least one lecture each year by somebody from the performing arts. Most of our lecturers are academics. Usually they're quite distinguished academics. But I like to have somebody from the performing arts, partly because I'm proselytizing. They're usually actors or people from the theater, although we have had, we had a composer of classical music one year. Because I really believe in theater, and theater, especially in the city, is having difficulty attracting audiences. I think that people who don't go to theater are missing out on one of the great forms of entertainment and more, moving experiences, ways of educating oneself, thinking about things, and many people I think grow up and they never even think of going to theater. So I like to try to expose our followers to the world of theater, but also because actors make great lecturers. We have trouble attracting people. This is a smaller audience than we will get from most of the other lecturers we have. But you are here, and I am so glad you are here, because actors have two things going for them. They have something really interesting to talk about, because they have a craft, and the craft is presenting something to us that is very valuable for us. And secondly, they are good at presenting themselves to audiences. That's what they do for a living. So I'll just say, this is all stuff that was on the announcement, so most of you have probably already seen this. But he is somebody who has a lot of experience in the three major acting media in our country: the stage, movies, and television. And he's done important work in all of those. So, for example, he was cast by Clint Eastwood in a stage version of the great novel by Dostoevsky, The Idiot. He's been in movies, which I confess I have not seen, but some of you may have, such as Hellraiser and Child's Play. He appeared in a movie with Walter Matthau. What a great actor he was. That must have been a great experience for him and for Walter Matthau. You can check the website if you haven't already read it, and you can find out about his accomplishments. He's also, there is a downside. He's tainted his career working as an academic. But fortunately...
on the dark side.
Well, no. I mentioned this in jest during dinner, and he thought I was making a comment about the University of Southern California, which is where he runs the Master of Fine Arts program in the theater. And I wasn't. They are our sister institution, our neighbor institution. My personal view has always been that it is in UC. The better all the USC and the other universities around here are, the better it is for UCLA.
Absolutely.
We have a better academic life. So I am not into any of that stuff. It's just that he's become an academic. That's what taints him.
Go figure.
But it is truly my great pleasure to introduce to you Andy Robinson.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Very kind of you. And it's wonderful to, as I said, to meet someone who is a true believer in theater.
You got to grow up in Manhattan.
Yeah, you grow up in Manhattan, wherever. Winnetka, Toledo, El Paso, wherever. See, the thing about theater, and I am a theater actor, even though I've done more television and films than maybe I care to admit, and some of which I really don't want to admit that I do. But the thing about theater is that here it is. It's a room with people, with living human beings, watching other living human beings who are giving you permission to look at them and to hear them. And one of the first prerequisites of being an actor is that you give your audience permission to see you, to hear you. There are students of mine who want to become actors, and then they step out into a stage and they try to hide. which is, it's a weird phenomenon, but that happens. And then there are professional actors that I see that are also trying to hide. And basically, if you give permission to be seen and to be heard, it's there's no such thing as being a little bit pregnant. You either go all the way or forget about it. You cheat the audience. I am a stage actor, although as you know, I've done a lot of that stuff, other stuff, and it's paid the bills, and that's been wonderful. Really wonderful, actually. It's important to pay the bills. Since most of my life, most of my jobs have been for, very little money. My focus has always been on my relationship between my work and my life. This is going to be a very personal talk tonight. Because this is my instrument. I don't have a violin that I play. I'm not a painter. I'm not currently writing a book. This is my instrument. And this is the instrument that I have to learn how to play in order to create a character, to project a character. And so where is the source of the playing? The source of the playing is here. Yes, you have a script, you have words, but as an actor, great actor, late great Charlie Hallahan once said to me when I was directing him in a production of Endgame at the Matrix Theater Company, we were getting into a big, heavy fight about, I was directing, he was playing Ham, and he suddenly took his script and he threw it in the middle of the stage. He says, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. You can bring in people here and just have somebody stand there and open the pages for you and charge them $20. I'm the actor. I know what I'm supposed to do here. And he won. He did know what he was supposed to do. It's everything. My work is fed by who I am and where I come from. And that's one of the reasons I guess I chose Long Day's Journey into Night for our seminar on Saturday, because there is no play, as those of you who know this play, that comes more from a deeply personal and real place. I mean, this guy dragged this play out of his kishkas. So tonight, I'd like to talk about some specifics of my life and how they inform the work that I do, and how I've attempted to absorb the experiences of my life and bring them into my acting craft, because that's the great job of the actor, is how do you yoke your craft? Because you can go to classes and you can learn how to speak and how to move and whatever, skills classes. But how do you bring this to that? What is the craft that brings the actor to this? So I'd like to talk about, perhaps a couple of specific ways in which I have created for myself a functioning craft that energizes my work. My life is, everything in my life is in play in terms of my work. It has to be. All the problems, all the puzzles, all the suras, the geschrei. I'm married to a Jewish woman, so I mangle Yiddish words, but that's okay. But it's all these contradictions in my life that provide the source of whatever power and presence that I bring to a performance. So, I'm going to share some thoughts about the craft of acting in relation to my own journey as an actor, a director, and a teacher. Because yes, in 2004, I decided to do that. And I'm going to give you some background that's going to help you in terms of what we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm a New Yorker, native New Yorker, born during the Second World War. My father was killed in the Second World War, which was the great catastrophe of our family. My mother fell apart. She had a nervous breakdown, became an alcoholic, dragged me around the country until she went back to her family in Connecticut. And up until the age of 10, we were basically half a step above homeless people. And it was very difficult. Thankfully, there was a school, a kind of school that no longer exists. My namesake school, St. Andrews, a small school in Rhode Island. I was in juvenile court once too many times. A social worker decided that I was not such a bad person. She took me to the school, and it was a church industrial school, what we used to call, that was run by the Episcopal Charities of New England. And I spent 8 years at that school, and it was a lifesaver. It really put me back on track. And especially, there are a few people, as we all have those teachers, and this one man, Alvin Twitchell Gould, who was this gaunt man from Maine, who ran a fabulous drama program. We were a small school, we get our asses kicked in all the sports and so forth, but our drama, our Thespian Society 1192, we competed with the biggest Catholic high schools. We were fabulous. And when we had a strut in our walk when we went to these drama festivals. It was wonderful. So from there, I went to college. I graduated from the New School of Social Research in New York. Got a Fulbright scholarship to study acting in England, a wonderful conservatory, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and that was it. Then I wasn't going to turn back. From there, it was like my life took off. I worked constantly. I got out of school, and for the next 51 years, I did film, television, theater, on Broadway, off Broadway, off Broadway, off Broadway. Los Angeles theater, repertory theaters around the country. I was a founding member of a company in New York, it's the La Mama Experimental Theater Club, and here, Antaeus Theater Company, if any of you have seen any of their shows, and the Matrix Theater Company for about 10 years, which was probably the best theater in town for 10 years because of the company that we had. And in 2004, I was asked to create and run an MFA actor training program, a conservatory program. And that I didn't want to do at the beginning. I figured, there's enough actors in the world, there's enough training programs, why do you need any more? And my wife reminded me that perhaps this might be an exciting choice, and plus the phone wasn't ringing off the hook for an actor of a certain age. And so I took the job, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. To become a teacher at that level, a teacher with extraordinary young people who are coming in, giving their lives over to me and to art faculty, who had a desire, a passion to become professional actors. It was like stunning, the responsibility and what I discovered about myself doing it. I've written a couple books, one called A Stitch in Time. For any of you Star Trek fans, if there are any out there, it was based on a character I played on a Star Trek series, Deep Space Nine. I loved this character so much that I wrote a book. Plus, and then this book, which I'm going to do some readings from, which I was published last year, Stepping into the Light, which is a memoir. And I'm currently at work on a book about the work that I've been doing at school with students called The Imaginative Body. And it's this work that there's this book, that Imaginative Body, that I've been struggling with for 10 years or so. That's where a lot of my talk is going to come, a lot of my thoughts are going to come from tonight. So even before I was a teacher, I was constantly engaged with what this craft is all about, this acting thing. It's a mystery. And even after many years of running this program, which I created from the ground up, it's still a mystery to me. And I'm one of those obsessive compulsive people that's still trying to penetrate the mystery of this acting thing. Because I think we're all a mystery, human beings. I think we are truly the undiscovered country. I think that it's the work of creating a craft is exploring that mystery on every level. But I think that's what every one of us has to do as human beings. I mean, not walk around with our heads here, and then there's this appendage called our body that sort of follows us around. And isn't that interesting? You know, we have this body. What does it mean? The thing about acting is that it means a lot. Commedia dell'arte. If you study Commedia dell'arte, that ancient, it's not so ancient, say 15th century Italian theater art form, they train you, quote unquote, from the feet up. You start with your feet. You start how to use your feet. And then from your feet, you get your characters. And then you work your way up. Okay. One of the things that's very important to me, and I'm getting into tonight, and I'm a very excitable person. This is how I am in class, and so you just have to put up with it. It's, that's who I am. Is that we all have our story. It's very important to understand that each and every one of us has our story. You don't have to be this poor little fucked up kid from Hartford to have a story. You can come from a very comfortable middle class family. You have your story. And your story is not just what has happened to you. Your story is what has happened in the past. It comes down through your ancestors. It comes through the genes. And this is the story that from the beginning, when a student comes into our program, that they are required to access. They are required to leverage. They are required to get into and explore. Because without a story, what the hell do we bring to the event? I mean, am I just going to read the lines? That's Reader's Theater. Blah, 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 blah. And then I can blah, 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 but I can sort of blah, 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 blah. But without the story, without the thing that comes from here, we don't give a shit. We sit in the theater, and even when we don't know it, we don't care. It's the difference between sitting back in your chair and sitting forward. The times you're sitting forward, there's somebody up there who's revealing something about him or herself that is compelling, where you have the opportunity to learn something new about yourself. So I'm going to share a few parts of my story that have informed my own craft. I started doing years ago work on masks. I love masks. And mask work was part of my training. And then I found out that I have masks. Not literal masks, but I do have personae, personalities, whatever you want to call it, that I shuffle between, depending on the situation. And the more consciousness, the more awareness I brought to this shuffling, the more I began to realize, wow, this is these masks, these personalities, these manifestations of Andy are coming from specific places. They're called masks, not because we're being phony, but because literally deep feelings, our experience, can actually take our muscles and change and configure our muscles into masks. Masks that communicate a pure feeling. You know, in ancient Greece, in an amphitheater, in the back, below the stage, there was a room called the skiing room, in which all the actors' masks were hung on a wall. And only those actors were allowed, well, an actor was only allowed to wear the mask or masks he was trained to wear. And if he touched another one, that was, the guy would get bounced. So, there are 4 masks that I have. And I'm going to read to you a bit. Hope you don't mind. I'm a fairly good reader. The first mask is what I call the demon mask. Up until the age of 10, the only place I felt released from a constant constricting tension was at the movies. It was the only place I felt safe. The screen gave me this lighted rectangular opening to a world where there was no threat of personal danger. When I wasn't at the movies, I felt constantly exposed to an indefinable, unnameable danger that had no ending in sight, let alone a happy end. As much as I wanted to, I knew I couldn't spend every moment of my life in a movie house. Somehow I had to learn to defend against that danger, to bring some of that comfort and safety I derived from the screen to the street. But I didn't know what the danger was. And if I didn't know what the danger was, what could I do about it? One night, I came out of the Star, a second-run movie house that was located in a tough neighborhood on North Main Street in Hartford, followed by two older kids. We had just seen Singing in the Rain, and I was still transported by one of the most joyous experiences of my young life. Skipping down the street, splashing imaginary rain puddles, and singing the title song. It was impossible for me to contain my enthusiasm or my body when something so fully engaged my fantasy life, a movie about movie stars who sang and danced. And I was only too willing to use the occasion to attract the attention of anyone else on the street and pass on the joy that filled me. Perhaps by the sheer force of my will, I could extend the fantasy to the street and transform the other pedestrians into singers and dancers the way it often happens in the movies. Well, two boys who were following me suddenly grabbed me from behind, hustled me into the dark end of an alley adjacent to the Star. You can come in, or not. And started using me like a football. They obviously didn't have the same reaction to the movie that I did. Most likely they were into a gangster movie like The Setup, where Robert Ryan plays a boxer who refuses to throw a fight. He's also dragged down a dark alley and beaten senseless by two thugs who finish the job by smashing his hands and fingers so he'll never be able to box again. Our scene, however, was real, and it hurt as I bounced between trash cans and brick walls and landed face first in the spilled garbage. Why were they doing this? It made no sense. I hadn't thrown a fight or done anything to deserve this kind of treatment. Or had I? These guys were big and mean, and I guess they'd found somebody they could blame for their miserable, snaggle-toothed lives. The violence happened with such sudden and sadistic fury, I wasn't able to catch my breath. Between the pain of their physical abuse and the frustration of being completely dominated by their size and meanness, I experienced a suffocating fear I had never felt before. The panic was rising. I couldn't catch my breath, and I believed that they were going to kill me and stuff me into one of those cans. So I went crazy. It was where I was going anyway, but I accelerated the process by grabbing at the emerging physical symptoms of a berserker behavior I'd seen my mother exhibit when she was drunk and got into a fight, usually with a boyfriend or someone in authority. She had a terrible temper, and when she lost it, she became oblivious to physical danger. My body was reacting to the almost overwhelming fear, but unlike Agnes, I was able to exert just enough conscious control to extend each physical impulse. I began to shake and quiver, moan and shriek like I was attached to a live electrical wire. I don't know where this muscular, visceral behavior came from or the ability to direct it, but the fit I threw 20 years later when I played the epileptic prince, Mishkin, in Dostoevsky's stage adaptation of The Idiot came from the same place. The two boys stepped back. They'd never seen anything like this. This bolstered my confidence, and I pumped up the energy and volume until their faces went slack with incomprehension, even fear. They backed further back. And I could find my breath now. I knew I had them, and I gave my newfound St. Vitus dance everything I had, eyes rolling and bugging, limbs shooting out in all directions, now bouncing myself off the cans, the walls, and the ground, and feeling none of the previous pain I had been when I'd been on the receiving end. It wasn't singing and dancing in the rain, but the two boys ran out of the alley, where a few people were standing at the mouth of the alley, peering timidly into the darkness. Left alone, I struggled to find my breath and pull back from this manic energy. It was like I'd been drowning, but somehow managed to come back to the surface. I started to cry, but bit it back, because I didn't want any of the people watching from the street to see. Being a fastidious kid, I tried to clean off the snot, blood, and filth that clung to me. I was more upset by the ripped and soiled clothes than I was by the bruises and scrapes. But standing in the alley, I felt powerful. I made out a lot better than Robert Ryan had, even though I didn't have Audrey Totter to console me. Not only did they not break my fingers, but I had discovered a way to defend myself in the face of overwhelming odds. In this garbage-strewn alley at 9 years old, I discovered something that could protect me. It was like putting on one of those scary African masks I'd seen in the Saturday afternoon serial Jungle Jim, a demon mask. I didn't think of this behavior as a mask then, obviously, but it was something that I learned to put on whenever I faced a physical threat and pour all the energy of my feelings into. Nobody, kid or adult, knew what to do when I was threatened and got behind the demon. As an actor, this particular mask became almost a default position. Whenever I was lost on stage, because I had gone to this demon so many times, my anger, my rage was accessible. And anger is kind of a phony emotion. It's easy, it was easy for me. Some people find anger difficult. But eventually I found that anger covers up other deeper emotions like grief, like mourning. And this mask culminated professionally in my very first movie, where I played a psychopathic killer in Dirty Harry, the Clint Eastwood movie. And ironically, I was typecast as a crazy for a long time. By the way, Clint Eastwood, he didn't cast me in Subject to Fits. He came to The Idiot. He came to The Idiot and saw me and then cast me into Dirty Harry. I'm going to read another. This one is The Fool. Insecure about my place in the world, I understood early on that the one place where I did feel some control and could get attention, the attention that I wanted, was in front of people. But in order to maintain their attention, I had to do more than make noises and weird faces. I had to do something that my audience wasn't willing or couldn't do. People want to laugh. They want to be entertained. And a kid like me knew that if he can provide that experience, they're willing to pay for it with the coin of their attention, even approval. Some of my earliest memories are of me standing in front of an audience of adults or other kids and playing out some crude scenario. Whether these audiences were captive or spontaneously gathered, I did everything I could to win them over. Even now, I wince at the bizarre image of the overweight boy with the desperate smile, dancing and cavorting like a spastic cartoon. My mother had little patience with my energy to begin with, and when I would launch into one of my elaborate and wordy performances involving set pieces and props, she wanted to jump out of her skin. "Don't be a fool!" she'd snarl. "Stop showing off!" Expressions I heard a lot and I hated, but they only made me more determined. Besides, there are always more people than not who encouraged me to show off and play the fool. Out of this determination to establish a front and center place where I could command attention, I began to create rudimentary characters, a monster, a soldier, a drunk, and give them simple situations. They were all based on movies and later TV shows like the sketch comedy of Sid Caesar and Jackie Gleason. I love Jackie Gleason's Drunk. The real ones disgusted me. The performance was a frenetic improvisation involving flailing physical activity. I mean, you can see it now. And a torrent of words. Like any kid, I'd play out a fantasy with or without an audience. The baseball pitcher in the crucial ninth inning of a championship game. A solitary G.I. Joe mowing down the Nazis and winning some battle. And the older I got, the more I craved an audience. And when I had one, the energy I put out to keep them could have lit up a city. I held nothing back. To this day, I can remember the stunned looks of people as I let loose a babbling, gesticulating collection of characters I either made up or pulled from the movies or the streets. From the beginning, I intuitively knew the value of an audience. Without people watching, I was just another kid kicking a can down the street. With an audience, everything was expanded, elevated. It was like the connection that a charge of electricity provides. A current ran between us. And whatever it was that was communicated in this exchange energized me and made me feel like I had stepped out of the shadows into the light. The effort I expended in these performances gave me a definition, an identity. Otherwise, I was shapeless and invisible. For a long time, I was tagged with the hated nickname Blob, and I bristled every time I heard it. Agnes, however, my mother, preferred the word fool to describe me. On the rare occasion when we're involved in a family gathering, she became visibly embarrassed when I'd launch into one of my spiels. She'd try to stop me before I got started, and when the others, especially the kids, urged me to continue, she'd protest that it wasn't appropriate, that I was only making a fool of myself. Years later, somebody showed me a tarot card called The Fool, which depicts a smiling, carefree young man dressed in tights, a tunic, and a Robin Hood hat, carrying a stick over one shoulder with a bundled rag of possessions attached to the end. He's about to step over the edge of a precipice, but he isn't aware of the danger because his attention is directed up and out at a distant horizon. Either he's going to plunge to his death because he isn't paying attention, or he's a visionary who will fly to whatever it is he sees in the distance. Not only did playing the fool give me a defined identity, it was another way I felt safe. Even with Agnes's disapproval, I knew that if I could make him laugh, I was somehow protected. I still, to this day, associate the word fool with acting, because I think actors are fools. Just as I associate behave yourself with being told to stand in the corner. The third mask, is the invisible man. Up to the age of 10, my home consisted of rooming houses and transient hotels. We didn't have motels then. Hotels my mother could afford from what she earned working at a succession of menial jobs. These accommodations were spirit-killing, haunted houses that featured bathrooms down hallways that held the stale smells of all kinds of spilled fluids. I hated and feared going to those bathrooms. The people who lived in these places were, for the most part, zombies, drunks, perverts, angry sociopaths, with a few normal people holding their noses while they passed through. As a child, I never questioned why we lived in these places, although Agnes often assured me that we were in the group passing through. As desperate and wasted as these places were, what made me reluctant to come home at night, and I should say I spent a lot of time on the streets at all times of the night. What made me reluctant to come home at night was the state in which I'd often find my mother. That's what really scared me. Neither the demon nor the fool could protect me from her anguish and misery, which is why I spent so much time in the movies and on the streets. The streets at night fascinated me. It was another world with people who seemed to function in some mysteriously normal manner, far away from what was going on at the rooming house or hotel. But it was a world that didn't approve of children being out on their own after dark, and I very quickly learned that I had to keep a low profile. Child wandering around a store or hanging at the edge of a crowd, looking for a way to get into a movie theater unaccompanied by an adult aroused suspicion, even anger. Countless times, police officers would confront me and demand to know what I was up to. By myself, I'd usually tell them that I was on my way home, and they'd shove me along in the direction I'd indicated. And there were always the predators. Always the predators. It was Claude Rains in The Invisible Man who encouraged me to look for a way to pass through parks and stores and movie lobbies, cloaked and unnoticed. I also wanted to be able to come home at night and not wake my mother and provoke a screaming match. I convinced myself that it was possible to become amorphous, disconnected, to be able to efface the definition I so craved in order to hover at the periphery like a piece of furniture or a cloud. Above all, I desperately wanted to sneak into movies at will. Rain's character encouraged me, but short of drinking some chemical potion, I wondered if there was a technique that would enable me to do all this. I certainly worked hard trying to develop one. I tried to flatten myself like Plastic Man, to surround myself with Wonder Woman's protective fog, to blur my identity like the Shadow. I thought that if I closed my eyes to the point where everything around me was barely discernible, then others wouldn't be able to see me. It was clear that eye contact had to be avoided, and I practiced holding my breath for minutes at a time. None of these techniques had succeeded in literally making me invisible, but as I practiced them, I was convinced that I was learning how to blur my edges and not call attention to myself. If all this effort didn't help me much at school or at home, oddly enough, I became more and more adept at moving through the streets at night under adult radar, sneaking into movies. I also developed a street sense for the predators. The Invisible Man balanced the fool. It was my attempt to reconcile the fear and fascination I had for dark places and shadows. I understood the value of blending in and being attentive to what was going on around me. Without this street sense, I didn't have much of a chance moving through the city at night and surviving. And finally, we have the good boy. School was always the most difficult passage to negotiate. After one of my nocturnal adventures, I was hardly in a scholar's receptive frame of mind the next morning, and more likely than not, I'd fall asleep in the middle of a lesson, which further estranged me from the teacher and the other kids. My grades reflected my scattered state of mind, and the only time I ever felt comfortable about being there was when I had a third grade teacher, Miss Bisakia, Gloria, who had a dark beauty and was mysteriously kind to me. Otherwise, school was a hardship, alleviated only when I played hooky and eluded the truant officer. I played the fool, often, especially in the schoolyard at recess. In the classroom, it only got me in trouble. But outside, when I felt the need to perform or to curry favor with someone, I would pull off a manic performance of some sort. If I was successful in forging a relationship, it was usually with another estranged social misfit, which certainly did not make me any more popular. Occasionally, I'd resort to my demon behavior when a bully threatened. Usually the encounter would end with trading of insults. But if he persisted, the ensuing violence would quickly spin out of control and someone got hurt. As much as I was afraid of violence and tried to avoid it, the first hit would always send me into that same raging anger that bedeviled Agnes. For both of us, it always came with a price. In the classroom, I sometimes lost control and went into a raging tantrum if the teacher criticized my behavior or punished me in a way that humiliated me. As a result, everyone was afraid of the crazy kid and kept their distance. The visits to the principal's office and resulting suspensions were further proof that this was a self-defeating course. Once, in Miss McNally's 4th grade class, something set me off, and instead of a tantrum, I began to cry for the return of my father. This fit also kept my classmates at a distance, but since it came from a true desire for my father to come back from the dead and make it all better, they now looked at me with startled and slightly repulsed expressions of sympathy. They felt sorry for me the way I felt sorry for Frankenstein or Wolfman. The Invisible Man didn't work at all. Any attempt to disappear only increased my alienation and loneliness. Besides, it was pointless. I was surrounded by kids and full light of day, and it was the teacher's job to pay attention to what everyone was doing. Even though I didn't want the kind of attention that boxed me in and held me to their expectations, I knew that I somehow had to become a good boy and please teacher. This was an important change. I soon learned that trying to be a good boy could attract the kind of attention that didn't piss people off. And I didn't have to work so hard. I had a chubby, freckled face and a wide-open smile, and as long as I could keep my temper in check and go along with the program, even when it was tedious and suffocating, I could get by without disappearing, playing the fool, going demonic. With the good boy, I had a way to feel accepted, approved, even loved. So, these things get into the body. I have a teacher, Jerzy Grotowski, a great Polish director, teacher, and he claimed that the body has memory. All of our cells, every muscle has memory. Everything that's ever happened to us, any trauma, any injury, any severe shock to our system is recorded, like a library, like a library. So these masks stayed with me, and they would get set off. Something would happen. I have no idea why or what the inciting incident was, but something would set one of these masks off, and bam, I was off. One or the other. But the tension of this constant shuffling and working with these various persona just became unbearable. But while it was unbearable, they also provided the energy of my life and the energy of my career. It was an odd thing. There was an energy, there was a dynamic that came out of these persona. I was not in control of any of it. And once I decided to become an actor, I relied on that energy to keep me moving forward, anything to keep me moving forward. So I got my Fulbright scholarship after graduating from college, and I did all kinds of repertory theater all over the country. Really worked hard, building up my craft, my credentials, and so forth, and finally came to New York, my Mecca, my hometown, and got a lead in an off-Broadway play, a very successful play called McBird. And after 3 months, I was fired because I couldn't handle it anymore. I was out of control. And when I was fired, I completely broke down. I was shell-shocked. I didn't even know if I wanted to continue to be an actor anymore. And I holed up in my apartment on St. Mark's Place and smoked a lot of dope, listened to a lot of music, and just stayed away. I didn't even go to plays. A friend came knocking at the door one night, guy I hadn't seen in years, and said, I want to start a theater company, and this woman, Ellen Stewart La Mama, I have an appointment with her tomorrow, and I want to show you something. So, okay. And I literally hadn't seen this guy for 2 or 3 years, and he suddenly showed up. He had just come back from Denmark, where he'd been working at this theater in Denmark with Grotowski and this other guy, Eugenio Barba, with this new process, this very physical training. So we cleared the furniture out of my little living room, and he got down on the floor, and he went through this exercise called the cat. It's a long exercise. It's an arduous exercise with handstands, headstands, back bends, slow motion, forward rolls, backward rolls, all done in slow motion. And it took about 20, 25 minutes, and at the end of it, I was blown away. It was like, Jesus, I want to do this. I want to learn how to do this. So we started a theater company, Ellen Stewart, who was this magical black woman who was La Mama, said, okay, after one meeting, she said, okay, you start your theater company, and you teach everybody in the world how to do this work. And I had no idea how to do the work myself, but thank God Stanley did. So we began working in this process, and it was arduous. It was here I was introduced to the concept of the via negativa. The via negativa is the road back that we have to take in order to move forward. It was something that Jerzy Grotowski introduced in his work. And he believed that by encouraging his actors and his students to take this metaphorical road back to confront the habits and practices based on false beliefs that distort our perceptions and abilities, that we are then able to move forward. We've cleared blocks and we can move forward. But we can't do it until we go back. And as I said, Jerzy believed that we are repositories of all our experience and what we've learned. And that as we mature in our lives, we find that some of this received information that we've internalized and stored is not very helpful. Indeed, as Alice Miller, the famous Austrian-German psychologist artist, she called it in one of her books a poisonous pedagogy, as she was trying to describe how a race of people could exterminate another race. So this poisonous pedagogy in my own life was becoming unbearable, and it was through this work that I began to deal with it, by going back, by confronting a lot of this shit that I'd stored away in various pockets of my psyche and my body and so forth. And it began to bring me back to becoming a person rather than a collection of personalities and masks and attitudes. The Grotowski work also opened up another concept called the beginner's mind, from the book of the same name by Shunryu Suzuki. The beginner's mind, the mind of purity, open to things as they are. This concept doesn't mean that it's not this mindfulness thing. It doesn't mean that if you don't like your life, that you just forget about it. The beginner's mind is if you are open to things as they are, you're open to the things that have happened to you, and you accept them. And you learn, not only learn to live with them, but you learn to work with them. It's not reverting to some blissful tabula rasa, clean slate, if such a thing exists. It means you're accepting what has happened to you, accepting what has happened to me, and freeing me from the bias of old judgments and false beliefs. So these two concepts, the via negativa and the beginner's mind, helped me to begin to build a craft, along with the Grotowski work that we were doing, that would not just contain the tensions of these conflicted personalities developed as defenses against a hostile world, but to use them as the dynamic of my story, a source of sustaining and creative energy. This was really important. It was like beginning to find my unexplored country. I mean, being a working actor with a lot of experience in film, theater, has given me an opportunity to cobble together a craft that works for me. And for me, this craft boils down to a very personal dialogue between my conscious, rational self and my imagination as I work to coax a character into existence for whatever play or film I'm doing. So, I'm jumping now. I'm jumping ahead to when USC, because I don't want to talk forever. Jumping when USC asked me to create a conservatory program to train actors for the profession. I realized I'd have to go back to the beginning and think about acting as a craft that can be passed on to the next generation. Because there's a real crisis in theater. And it involves the audience. There's a generation of audience that we're losing. Older people are our strongest audiences, people our generation. And it's not being replaced. And it's terrible. It really is. And so I think one of the reasons it is because, it's going to piss you off, Irene. It's that, no, it's not. You're going to actually like this. I think there's a lot of bad work that's going on. And I think people are getting turned off by the bad work. And I didn't want this job. I didn't want to do this job. But I realized that I had to take it. I had to open up my personal, private dialogue and share my belief system and working practices with young men and women who are serious as life and death to become professional actors. And if they were willing to put it on the line, then by God, I'll go with them. I'll go with them with it. But they're going to have to take the via negativa. That's the very first thing that happens in a classroom with me. Why do you want to be an actor? Because you're pretty? And because you're smart? Because you need some attention? Got a good body? Go to the gym a lot? Your ego needs a little massaging? Our profession is part of the world. The world we live in. And if we're not able to hold the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time, his form and pressure, then, as Hamlet urged his players, then I don't know what we actors are supposed to be doing in front of a paying audience. So my basic question was, and it still is, how do I help them hold up this mirror? And how do I help them as I struggle to unify my own story with the working craft, which I'm still doing? You know, it's a mysterious choice, as I said, this profession. We start out by saying, I can do that, like the song and the chorus line. I can do that. I'm pretty, handsome, yeah, I can do that. And for many of us, the self-examination stops there. So, as I said, the first question I asked him, why do you want to be an actor? Especially when buses and trains and planes and are unloading, want to be actors every day, and this is a business that's not waiting for us with bouquets of roses. We all have a dynamic. We all have a dynamic. Otherwise, we'd be dead. Mine is the tension between the fool and the invisible man. The fool who wants to stand up there and show myself and be the actor, and the invisible man who would rather not really know you or for you to see me. Obviously, the dynamic between the demon, the good boy, is very clear. I think that exists a lot. Hamlet's dynamic. Hamlet's dynamic. The first line of that soliloquy, what is it?
To be or not to be.
To be or not to be. Great dynamic. You accept that, you've got Hamlet. You've got the energy to play Hamlet. And the dynamic is always present. We're always having this argument, and I do call it an argument. For example, in class, I'll ask my students to identify the current argument or conflict or whatever it is that they're struggling with, because they're always struggling with something. And I'll ask them to physicalize both sides of the argument and find a physical action for each side. And the physical action grounds the argument. Then I ask each of them to get up in front of class and play out their argument. And watching an actor play out both sides of an argument, it's like watching, and when it's done well, it's like watching two different people going at it. I mean, try this sometime. Just be careful where you try it. Then I ask them to bring this argument with the physical actions they've found for each side of the argument to support a piece of text that they've memorized. And it's a tricky thing, doing two things at the same time. Speaking the text and keeping the argument alive internally as a subtext. But no matter what the text is, classical or contemporary, it is energized. It is brought to life by the energy of their argument. The actor's performance is completely dependent upon the choices he or she makes. But is it any different for any of us? We make a myriad of choices every day. Some choices are easier than others, some are hard, some give us an existential headache. And where each of us is in our life right now is largely because of the choices of action that we've made. In that sense, we are all actors. I think I'm going to wind this up. And I think just say, what I want to get down to is, it was the job at USC when I took it, and I began to doing my due diligence. I went to various MFA, the best MFA programs in the country, sat in classes with master teachers, read brilliant books by theater practitioners. And what it came down to, that for me, is that it became very clear that the only subject that made sense for a deep study of performance, actor training, is the human body and being. And the nature that Hamlet demanded the players hold a mirror up to is our human nature. Human nature. And where do you begin? Where do you even begin the study? I mean, we're not scientists, psychologists, sociologists, we're actors. And yet being an actor has to encompass all of that. I mean, this complex organic structure took billions of years to create. And this is the instrument that produces our work. And like any other instrument, as I said at the beginning, we have to learn how to play it. But that's true for all of us. It's true for all of us. This is our instrument. We have to cherish it. We have to explore it. We have to exercise it. We have to challenge it. We have to believe in it. We have to honor it. So like the chorus line dancer who said, I can do that. I had no idea when I said that. When I first said that, what a journey it would be for me to be able to hold up a mirror that reflects a human that's more than just a stick figure. We can do that. Not to become actors, that's not for everybody. But all of us can learn how to act as human beings. And I think I'll stop there. I think that's a good note to start with. Thank you. Yes.
So it seems, because I've always heard that, actors often try to, get into their character and become their character, but it seems what you're saying in some ways that it's getting into yourself and bringing yourself into the character. So as an actor, do you try to get into your character and bring your background into the character, or do you try to adapt the character to your own background?
I mentioned, I'm playing Prospero in The Tempest this summer. Enormous role, complicated as hell. As Dan said at dinner, it's the last play that we believe that Shakespeare wrote entirely by himself. And everything about it is complicated because it's a valedictory. I mean, it's in a sense, it's a farewell. And everything about the play is deep and it's complicated. The good news is I'm much bigger and more complicated than Prospero. Prospero exists on a page. As I said, here I've got this instrument that's taken a long time to create. So I'm Prospero. Prospero is me, because I make that choice. Of course, yes, I work at it. I work at making other choices to find physicality, to find business, and so forth, but I am Prospero. So the character is in me. I read it, that's the whole thing what I said at the beginning. Here's me and here's the play. And the craft is making that leap. But it's not the leap into there. It's this into here. Absorbing the text. Bringing the text into you. That's my take on it. Other people have other opinions. Yes, sir.
And just something might be slightly comforting. I mean, you said that theater turns people off because much of it is bad. But much of it was always bad.
Yes.
And much of all art is at best mediocre. I mean, we hope, we go, we adventure for the nuggets, for the chance. We can't stay home or we'll miss the good stuff. But most stuff is mediocre, right?
Thank you for saying that. And Harold Clurman, a great thinker about all this stuff, and a director, and a giant in American theater. I once went to the Taper, to a rehearsal room in the Taper, Gordon Davidson, and set up he came into town. And so Harold Klerman spoke to a bunch of us. And he said this one thing I'll never forget. He said, theater is like agriculture. It takes a lot of shit to grow it. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So you
Miss.
said you worked directly with Grotowski? Or just,
Yeah, I did.
is it true that you made all his students run a lot?
Oh, he made people do everything. He pushed the student to the absolute physical, I mean, until you didn't think you had anything left. I mean, the training is so rigorous and so demanding. There's a Grotowski Institute in Italy that Thomas Richards runs. And he's trying to keep that alive. But Grotowski, he made a change towards the end of his life. As he went from theater as performance to what he called theater as vehicle. He was interested in the transcendent, how the actor could transcend the body and move kind of like up. It was interesting, but it was like arduous as hell. I was in never better shape. Yes.
I was struck, you started your lecture talking about how the actor or the student who wants to be an actor has to come out in the open and can't hide. And that's your first thing and then your third mask was the invisible man, who seemed to be the man who just wants to hide.
Yeah.
And I mean, so what I thought you were doing as you were going through the mask was saying, these are modes that you can get into in acting, but it seems as if the invisible man is exactly what you want to avoid in acting.
But it creates the dynamic with the fool, because it is that dynamic. Because the invisible man obviously is clearly about fear, and it's the fear that we all have. Certainly actors, going out on stage, and there are times when an opening night would come along, and I'm sure this is going to happen to me with Prospero, when I'm going to wait just before I have to walk onto that stage, and I'm going to have this thought: I wish the fuck I had never come here. Honestly. And that's the dynamic. And when you see, and every actor that you see, well, not every actor, some actors, like they're bloodless, they're nerveless. I don't know where they come from. But most actors, that is the dynamic, the energy, a dynamic energy of their performance is that thing that's going on between the fool and the invisible man. And it's energy. It's like AC/DC. It creates that energy.
Can I ask
Yes, Mark.
a dumb question? I'm sorry, because this was
There are
so
no dumb
interesting, and this is a
questions.
stupid question. I was just wondering, did you ever get into any arguments with Clint Eastwood about any things?
We never talk.
Okay, so
Clint, I mean, that's why I had to laugh when you said that Clint cast me in the Idiot. No, I mean, he's a nice man, but no, he's a different kind of actor.
but he saw something about your.
Oh, he
your
was
acting.
very appreciative,
Yeah.
and of course I gave a great performance that night when he came to the show. He had to leave at intermission because the woman he was with picked up. She had this rabbit coat, and somehow she had picked up a cigarette butt that was lit in the public theater, and it got caught in a rabbit coat. So during the first act, there was this horrible smell in the theater. And at the time, Irene and I were doing this macrobiotic diet, and I was farting a lot. And so the other actors were turning up to me and said, "God damn it, don't you're doing this." I said, "No, I'm not, it's not me. And then we came back for the second act and he was gone. And I thought, oh man, well that's it,
Didn't
I
like
can
it?
get that job. Well, he had to leave because his girlfriend's coat was smoldering.
Wow.
That's a story.
Different kind of insult.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Andy, just thank you very much.
Thank you.